Big headlines about an idol's house usually end in praise of luxury, fantastic price lists, or a glamorous lifestyle that seems untouched by reality. But when Korean media started talking about BTS's Jungkook home, the tone felt different. Not just admiration, not just envy. There's wonder, suspicion, and a recurring question: why does this house feel unusual for a global idol of Jungkook's size? Since several pieces of information about Jungkook's residence circulated, public attention was immediately drawn. Not because of luxury interior exhibitions or deliberate social media uploads, but precisely because of the lack of exposure. The Korean media noticed one odd thing. Jungkook barely talked about his home, never made it part of his public image, and never used it as a symbol of success. In fact, in the Korean entertainment industry, home is often an extension of a celebrity's social status. Some Korean entertainment media began to highlight this pattern with an unusual point of view. They compared Jungkook to idols of the same generation, even his seniors. Many celebrities use the house as proof of going up in class, as an indirect message that their struggle has paid off. Jungkook did the exact opposite. His house feels like a space deliberately hidden from the spotlight, as if not to show off, but to be protected. Media suspicions were further strengthened when some industry sources mentioned that Jungkook's house was designed with a rare priority in mind. Not a party room, not a flashy private studio, not excessive entertainment facilities. The focus is precisely on comfort, tranquility, and a high level of privacy. This made many journalists wonder, for whom, in fact, was the house created? The question brings the Korean media to one tentative conclusion that is quite sensitive. They considered that Jungkook's house was not built to meet the lifestyle of idols in general, but to meet very deep personal needs. Some entertainment articles even suggested that the house resembled a family home rather than a celebrity home, a rarely used term for idols that are at the peak of world popularity. The suspicion grew stronger as the public recalled Jungkook's background. He was not an idol born into a wealthy family. From a very young age, he already assumed a great responsibility, not only as a trainee, but as a child who was well aware of the condition of his family. Korean media said traces of the past never seemed to completely disappear from the way Jungkook lived his life, including in the way he chose where to live. Instead of building a house as a symbol of personal achievement, Jungkook looks like someone who wants to create a safe place. The media highlighted how he almost never brought celebrity friends to his house, never invited a crew for content, and never made them the setting of a story. In a world that is so open and full of branding strategies, this attitude feels awkward. And that's exactly where suspicion arises. Some Korean entertainment columnists say Jungkook's home is a reflection of his most human fears: fear of loss, fear of not being able to protect those closest to him, and fear of repeating the difficult times he once went through. The house, in their opinion, is not just property, but an emotional fortress. A place where Jungkook can be John Jungkook instead of Jungkook BTS. The public reaction was divided. Some netizens praised Jungkook as humble and emotionally mature. But there are also those who feel strange, even excessive suspicion. Why would an idol as big as Jungkook choose such a simple life? Why does he not openly enjoy the fruits of his labor? These questions only magnify the media spotlight. Interestingly, instead of refuting or clarifying, Jungkook remains silent. It is this reticence that, according to the Korean media, is the main fuel for curiosity. In the K-pop industry, silence is often louder than official statements. And Jungkook, with all his composure, as if letting the public interpret for itself. Some Korean pop culture analysts even judge that Jungkook's house reflects the paradigm shift of a new generation of idols. Success no longer has to be on display, and luxury is no longer the main goal. In this context, Jungkook is considered an anomaly as well as a symbol of change. He succeeds, but doesn't get caught up in having to look successful. The Korean media has come to a surprising conclusion. It is not Jungkook's house that is suspicious, but the industry standard that has been considered normal. When an idol chooses to live in a way that is more human, more closed, and more family-oriented, it is considered unusual that Jungkook's house is not just a building, but a silent statement. A statement that behind the global spotlight, Behind the grandiose stage and the world record, there is a child who still wants to go home to safety. And perhaps that is what makes the Korean media not stop suspecting. Not because there is something to hide, but because too few idols dare to live like that. Korean media has not stopped at a sense of wonder. After various speculations about the function and meaning of Jungkook's house circulated, the focus of the news slowly shifted to a more personal direction, almost taboo to talk about openly, who the real center of the house is. In some entertainment reports, there are vague sentences that seem to want to say without daring to assert that Jungkook's house is not entirely about Jungkook. This suspicion arises from his consistent pattern of life. Jungkook is known to rarely come home late for non-work matters, is almost never heard of partying, and prefers to spend his free time with a quiet routine. Korean media began to associate this with the concept of the house he built, a place not designed for temporary escape, but to settle down emotionally. From the point of view of cultural journalism, this is a strong signal that the house has a much greater sentimental value than its material value. Some entertainment reporters even mentioned that Jungkook's house feels like a parent's home idealized by a child who was once deprived. The sentence immediately sparked a debate among Korean netizens. Some consider the media too far into the personal sphere, but there are also those who feel the statement actually explains many things that have been felt odd from Jungkook's attitude towards money and luxury. In Korean culture, home is not just a place to live. The house is a symbol of stability, responsibility, and adult achievement. When a child succeeds, the parent's home is often the living proof of that success. The media began to read Jungkook's house through this lens. They considered that the house reflects a sense of want to reciprocate rather than want to enjoy. Media suspicions deepened when some journalists brought up Jungkook's old interview, in which he once briefly alluded to his desire to live quietly and not trouble parents. The sentence that was then passed by now feels like a new puzzle piece that has found its place. Jungkook's home is seen as a manifestation of a silent promise he made as a teenager, long before his name was known to the world. This is where the Korean media narrative changes drastically. The house is no longer discussed as a property, but rather as a psychological symbol, a place built by someone who matured too soon, who learned about the uncertainties of life at an age when it should still be playing. The media began to write that Jungkook was not building a house to show who he is now, but to appease who he used to be. The public reaction was again divided. Some netizens felt sympathy and called Jungkook an example of an idol who doesn't forget himself. But there are also those who question whether this kind of emotional burden should continue to be borne by an artist who has been working nonstop for more than a decade. This discussion even extends to idol mental health issues, family pressures, and public expectations that are often inhumane. Interestingly, HYBE as an agency chose to remain silent. There is no clarification, no refutation, no